Punisher.
Retaliation's end. In ashes they will lie, for Sharon's legacy will never die. Burn it down, the fruit of the poisonous tree, gunning for CPS victory decree. On the attack with fury unchained, fighting Tennessee, Kentucky restrained. War anthem eternal, the revolution's here, saving Sharon's kids, conquering the fear. Gunning for CPS. Burn it all.
Hey, look. This for every mama got her baby snatched on some bogus shit. For every pops they locked out the crib like he ain't blood. CPS, y'all been eating off pain for too long. We know what you on. But now it's war, this gunning foe, CPS. Kick doors, no warrants, they taking our seeds. Say it's neglect, but they planting they greed. feds in their pocket, judge got a fee. Run it like a business, adoption spree. Contracts overseas, got partners in France. But shorty from Shy, he ain't get a chance. Mama worked 2 jobs, daddy do right, but they still snatch his baby in the middle of the night. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's Suffer Davis popping and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruin good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They labeled us monsters, called us unfit, but it's they paperwork dirty, all of it forged and flipped. How the fuck they selling babies to a bidder overseas? Then tell the fam you unworthy. Man, please, we got mamas in pain, daddies in tears. They breaking our hearts, been doing it for years. Now we riding with Gunna, and we got the proof. Sworn under oath, now it's time for truth. Trump got the team and the pen in his hand. He said bring them home, now that's the plan. You feds been hiding, but it's over now. We moving like an army, and we ain't bowing down. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's Suffer Davis popping and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruin good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They ain't gods, they ain't law, they just people, corrupt people. And when the people rise, ain't no system safe. The Chi-Town, it's the movement. We gunning for CPS, and we coming heavy.
I'm gonna pull the whole thing down. I'm gonna bring the whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Gunning for CPS. I'm your host, Gunner. Guys, we've got a really awesome show tonight, man. We have been, our team has been working diligently on several different angles, and we have had meetings of the minds on several cases and bringing a lot of our personal experience and everything else through, which is where we've brought a lot of our research and everything that we've done for our own personal cases, or once again, looking up a few other things for, other people, just to assist and share that information and or for what we do for the show. Once again, because we confirm everything that we have going out there. I just want to say hello to everybody. Hello, Herbert. It's good to see you out there. Our Darren's in the back room hanging out. I'm sure he'll be out here a little bit later. He's got a few things he's working on. But good to see you, Herbert. If you guys don't know, Herbert's been around for quite a while, following us on the CPS Breaking News Network, from the Tiff and Punisher show, so on and so forth. Guys, I've got something for you, and I'll share this out here. I wanted to share this screen here. The CPS Breaking News Network is hosting a summit for any and all, leaders of the movements, people that are in movements in your state, and this or that. And I think we're going to end up giving, I believe the timeline is anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes for somebody to come up and basically this is a quick intro or defend the points of topic, just like an old-fashioned debate. And these are some of the things of, answering a few questions back and forth, probably with a moderator, to disclose some of the informations of the do's and the don'ts and a lot of the arguments. And I guess bringing all these leaders together to turn around and say, you may not have the way, I may not have the way. We're all working together. We're trying to get to bring down this beast, which is exactly what it is. And here, I'm going to share this here. Blam! And it is going to be Saturday, February 21st at 8 p.m. Central. It's going to be on YouTube, on the CPS Breaking News Network there. I believe Tiff and the Punisher that I don't know which ones platforms, but it should replay on all those channels if you guys follow those other channels, as well as it should replay here on Gunning for CPS. So you guys can catch that, but get that word out to everybody, whether it's Tanawa Downing, Connie Reguli, all those others that are out there that are kind of leaders in the movements to go over this, of saying, kind of like what they cover, give a short conversation of what they're doing. Once again, February 21st on a Saturday at 8 p.m. And the concept is for everybody to come together, stop a lot of this bickering, and kind of voice our concerns of why this works, why it doesn't work, and listen to both sides of the story and get some perspective on these things. And here's the other thing. We can be adults and we can agree to disagree. Doesn't mean I don't want to stop you doing it. And I've learned this through going through this with the journey with several people in movements, from working with, Malibu, Dallas. You love them, hate them, whatever it is. There was a lot of information that was there, and I was there to gather the information and bounce a lot of questions off. And there was only, somebody can only take you so far, because they're only going so far in their journey. And this is what we're trying to explain to people with this summit is to what are some of the aspects or things you can draw that may be particular to your case. You could get help over here, or you could do stuff over here and help people over here. There's many different facets from this, and that includes, Jessica, Tanawa, I believe Dave Weigel, Connie Regula. You guys reach out to those guys. If you guys are watching this show and you guys are part of those groups, say, hey, man, CPS breaking news thing, there's this symposium going on. This gives everybody, and you can rebroadcast this because it's going to be on that channel. So if you know what you're doing with YouTube or even Facebook Live, there's ways that you can rebroadcast from the YouTube channels and share that to your own little network, including your Facebook Lives. That is possible. That's how I rebroadcast a lot of the shows that we have here. And you can subscribe. That's one way we get a lot of networking done. That's why sometimes during the shows, we don't see all the numbers or the real numbers of the people actually watching or who we reach. Why? Because people share our live feed and we don't see the numbers of their viewers, and so on and so on. So we know from even the people that have reached out or through the original show, or, people are repetitious or comfortable. They're going to get that information when they get it. And this is why we have stuff usually on YouTube. We can see it real well. I don't know what's going on with the Facebook. The live, there was a time where I got suspended for no reason. I may have to fix something in the back room and play with it a little bit more, but we've had the issue before to where I'm not seeing, if you're on Facebook and you're watching this, I'm glad you're watching this, but it's hard to interact for some reason. It used to come up. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We're looking into that. I may have to reset a few things, like I said. This is why we drive a lot of our traffic right over to the YouTube channel, Gunning for CPS. So you guys are excited and everything else. And there's Chris. Hello, Chris. And we're going to start this with something that's close to home here in Blount County, Tennessee. And I've got to share this and a lot of things. If you live in Blount County, Tennessee, and you're watching this, you're going to go, oh my God, there's so much going on. Yes, it made national news when Dalton was a teacher in the system for almost 20 years, touched so many kids, this and that, and got off on 6 months probation. Teacher license suspended for 2 years. But that was only after public pressure. There's a lot of other cover-ups and everything else and mass corruption going on in Blount County, Tennessee, even with my case. And just for some of you guys that don't know, Jessica Saxton is actually from the same county I'm from. And we actually had the same magistrate and the same judge. That's what connects me with Jessica Saxton and, excuse me, the particulars of that particular movement. And everybody goes, well, how do you this with Jessica? We have the same judge. We have the same magistrate, literally. She's had a few more that don't, but we have two in common. Yeah. Don't you love that cup? Well, yeah. See that? Like that. But I want to cover this another story that, once again, that's going to kill you. And it killed us to find this out. Now, I've got so many questions on this, but this is here local to Blount County, Tennessee. This just happened. It was posted the other day, and this is going to shock you guys. Okay, we're deal with this. This is a 14-year-old little boy that was in the custody of the Blount County Sheriff's Department, the jail, and the boy was literally in the jail. Okay, 11-year-old boy. Let me try and maximize this and let me. I'm going to bring the comments down here so you guys can see it a little bit better. Look at this here. 14-year-old boy named Cameron in custody with Blount County, Tennessee, died at the jail of cardiac arrest. What happened to this child? Who did it? Now, wait a minute. We have foster care. We have this. We have that. What crime did a 14-year-old little boy, this boy over here, what is he doing in the prison? I mean, think about this for a minute. A 14-year-old little boy, well, maybe they have a sexual. They don't belong. Children don't belong in the same prison. Okay, the prison area, and both men and women, of course, segregated, but not just state or county prisoners. They have a contract to hold federal prisoners at this local jail. They have a contract for this stuff. Guys, that's sick. That's a look, man, look. This is a 14-year-old boy. What the hell did he do? Nothing's come out. Did he commit murder? There was nothing in the paper about murders going on. I mean, some of these other things. What is it that this boy has done that has now cost him his life? Not just now, hold on now. This is not just in the care of CPS. This is in the care of the Blount County Sheriff's Department that now a boy has been murdered. Oh, he died of this? No, he wasn't. He was murdered. Let's call it for what it is. He was murdered while in your care. Yes or no? Yes. A healthy 14-year-old boy, being in there, you scared him to fucking death. Let's be honest, Scared Straight program. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I don't know what you guys think. And feel free to chime in. But that's disgusting. Well, they don't have a juvenile set. What did this 14-year-old boy do that much that you had to put him in with those kind of criminals to cause this? Yeah, Billy, exactly. What are they trying to hide? Here's my question with the pedophile ring and everything else that's been going on in here. Was that the local boy that maybe was taken from his parents by CPS and then brought up to the jail to be everybody's fun little toy? You sick fucks. That's the question I've got, especially with what's being revealed up here. Was he passed around? Why would you teach the kid don't look like this? That well, you just don't know the kid. I don't care. There's juvenile facilities. There's other things in there. Unless the boy has committed a felony act, what the hell was a 14-year-old boy doing in the jail? I just can't. And it's huge. So going on with it, like I said, there's a couple other things. We'll cover these things here. Guys, it's just absolutely disgusting to me. I just can't. Now, I've got a couple other videos. You can, once again, you can watch them, this and that. But this one, and Darren, you get a chance if he gets out here. Why don't you pop in here? I'm going to play this next video. But this is this is a member of SCOTUS recently talking about the bar. Oh, you're going to love this one, guys. Check this out. And this is Scaly.
In most law schools, you can get out without ever having studied the First Amendment. Can you imagine getting a degree which says you are learned in the law in the United States and you've never studied the First Amendment? And can you imagine what kind of a society that's going to produce if the class that is supposed to be the defender of the First Amendment doesn't know anything about it? And more of the law schools, you take whatever courses you want. The professors like that. Because when there are required courses, the professors have to teach those courses. You need 2 professors to teach evidence. You need 2 to teach federal courts. I can't tell you how often I get applicants. You know, I look at what courses they've taken. If they've taken law and women, law and spinach, law and anything, I forget about it. But sometimes I ask, why didn't you take federal courts? He says, well, it wasn't being taught. The semester I had room for it. That's what's going on. The professors like to teach their hobby courses, which are usually courses in which they've written a book, and they can get the class to do the research on their book. No, I think it's scandalous. And so the American Bar Association is right. If indeed there is not a body of law that's essential, if you want to pretend to be learned in the law, if there is no such body of law, the ABA is right. Learn nothing in 2 years instead of learning nothing in 3 years.
How do you decide which vegetable to use in your examples? you got spinach in that one, but in the
There it is, guys, from a sitting member of SCOTUS. They are turning out lawyers out of law school that have no idea of the Constitution or taking federal law. This is why most of your lawyers that are out there, especially family law lawyers, here's the big surprise. This is going to show you how easy they skated through on a lot of these things. A lot of them, they didn't take the federal, because if they took the federal classes, they could apply for the what? For the federal license. But what are most of the family court judges and everything? I do wills, I do this, I do a few things here and there. And then I practice family law. That's my specialty. And all I do is I learn the codes and this and that for the state and this and that, but it doesn't apply to this. It doesn't go in, and they don't teach the law. That's what he's admitting to. He's saying there's a whole generation of judges, of somebody coming out of the school promoting this whole generation, or this graduating class is going to be the First Amendment defenders. And none of them even know what it says or what it means or how it partakes to everyday life. That's scary, folks. And that's why you're facing the judges you're facing and the magistrates. That's that generation. It's been going on for a long time. This is why they're clueless on the Constitution. They're clueless on their state constitution. They figure, I've got the job of judge. I used to be an attorney. Now I'm a judge because I've buddied with somebody and they've come in. A lot of them are not elected officials in states. They're appointed by the current sitting judges there that are there, will select magistrates. And then once the magistrates, they serve for so long, then they qualify to take and become a judge. In a lot of states, that is the practice. Once again, check your own state as far as how that process works. But that's scary that they're actually admitting to it. That, he's saying, I'm seeing this. We're seeing this in the courts, and we're wondering, why didn't you take the federal class? Why didn't you take the federal class at all? Hello, Cindy Lynn. And Herbert, it has not been disclosed what the child has done. They have, from my understanding, they have sealed the case and everything around it because now it's juvenile. Funny how they use that when it works to their advantage, doesn't it? And that's the same thing Billy was talking about. What are they trying to claim? Because a lot of people in Blount County, after everything that's been happening in Blount County, Tennessee, and if you don't know, a lot of it's made national news. Even with Diane Lashsmith, that was a former magistrate here in Blount County, that her own child was going to federal court for child pornography, and she helped them destroy some of the evidence. I mean, it's crazy. But let's take and check this out here. And I've got another one here for you, and we'll just go through some of these things here, and then we'll open the discussion. One. Okay, now there's one. You guys are going to have to work with me. Let's see if I can. I don't know why that's not. Oh, there it is. Check this one out. This next video here, and I know you'll get along, but if you guys remember, we broke the story that MK Ultra was real. There was people there, and one of those people that were participant in the areas, one of the people they let loose under the MK Ultra, was this man that we have all painted once again, has been created as a mass murderer that had his supposed disciples carry out murders they said he told me to do and shunned responsibility. Once again, there's a whole story behind that, but this is MK. But listen to what this man says. It's good.
Charles Manson made a lot of sense for a madman.
Give me my rights. All I want is the same rights that my fathers died for. I see Reagan getting up in the United Nations telling the world how human rights are so important and how we should give all the humans rights. And then he turned around and asked him on the darker side, what about Charlie? He'd say, oh, well, he don't deserve no rights. Well, if I don't deserve no rights, then who does deserve rights? I didn't break no law. I want my rights. My rights, you give me a parole every other day, it doesn't give me my rights. If I don't have any rights, he doesn't have any rights. He doesn't have any rights, and you don't have any rights.
I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, in other words, if everybody gets equal rights, you got equal rights with the rights I got. And that's to sit down and keep your mouth shut or get your jaw broke. Is that the rights you want? You know, and you can't say, well, the Jews are the chosen children of God, and these Germans are no good because their forefathers fought. No. The Germans are no worse than the Jews, and the blacks are no worse than the Mexicans, and the Mexicans are no worse than the Filipinos, and the Filipinos are no worse than the Chinese. So how do you reach a one with that whole circle? How do you reach a one with that whole circle? How do you have peace on this earth? You can't have peace on this earth unless you let Second World War die. You want to keep the Second World War going? You want to keep selling and buying Germans and dead Indians on TV every day? You know, that's got to stop. The Second World War's got to stop. And it's got to stop in the Jews. The Jews won't let the Second World War stop. They keep the Second World War going. They keep it going. They keep it going. They keep perpetuating it because they're making money. As soon as the Second World War was over, they never stopped the brainwash. The brainwash that they were selling the American public was making money. You see what I'm saying? They were making money. They're not going to stop making money. If the combination's there to make money, they're going to keep selling it. They'll sell it all the way till I'm in the cell with a guy named Millman, Jerry Millman. And he's got pictures of Hitler and Japanese and things all that. I said, boy, Hitler must have been a hell of a guy. He said, Hitler was terrible. I hate him. I said, why do you hate him? He said, I'm a Jew. I said, well, why do you enshrine this guy? Is he your daddy? And he looked up to his mother's fear. And his mother's fear was Hitler. Hitler was like his father figure. He loved Hitler, but he hated Hitler. He needed Hitler to hold him up. Because Hitler was holding his hate up. Because without his hate, he didn't exist. He didn't have no reason to live unless he had some hate. He didn't have any reason to buy and sell unless the money held him up. If you took the money away from him, you took the hate away from him, he'd be gone. So how do you communicate to a whole group of people? You stand up and you take the worst fear symbol there is and say, there, now I've got your fear. Now I've got your fear. And your fear is your power, and your power is your control. I'm your king of this whole planet. I'm going to rule this whole world.
It's not about the label butterfly. It's what they try to hide beneath.
Guys, I'm going to say this simple. Take that statement he was saying, now run it parallel to what we see with CPS in the court systems today. Same model. Same model. They've been using over and over again. Why? Because it makes money. The drive is the money. Nothing about safety, nothing that. It's like cattle. They don't care. They've been using this same model, and they've been applying this same model all the way since World War II. And this is, once again, the leftover. How do you do it? You incentivize it. You get people in trouble. You blackmail them. You do this. You do that. Parallel. Now, that came out of Charles Manson's mouth. He wasn't wrong. And it's in a lot of now that the curtains are the are being pulled back in America, we find out the banking industry is doing what it's doing. We find out where the money's coming from here. We're finding out that most people didn't know. I knew long ago there are two different types of Jew people that deal with the Jews. There's nationalists, and then there's the ultra religious kind. And this is the same thing. This parallels what we also see, and they don't want us to look at with the same thing with people that are from countries from Islam. There's some that will benefit it, but they use it by rule of their religion. The same thing goes for that same other group of people. It just depends on which side. This is why you have I think they call it APAC. It's a contract saying that you're going to stand with Israel. For any senator or congressman that would actually take and sign that paper has committed an act of treason against this country, because you're swearing allegiance to another country. See, people don't understand, a lot of people today, especially too, the power of what happens when somebody becomes a U.S. citizen that's here from another country. One of the things you have to do is swear allegiance to this country above all others. The same thing goes when you serve in any branch of the military. You serve, and it's a lifelong oath. That oath doesn't go away. Here's the reason why I tell you it doesn't go away. Because if these lawyers and CPS workers and everybody else if they're former military and they get caught doing something unconstitutional, they don't go before a thing. They are required to be recalled. Re-enlisted, even though you got a DD-214. Well, I got a DD-214. I'm out. No, buddy, you better read that contract better, because that contract's for life. If you ever screw up, you can be recalled at any given time, it says, under that contract for the needs or for the violation of your oath. If you've done that, you go to a military tribunal. Boom. You're done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You were military. Unless Bob's your uncle and then they keep you out of the military thing. But if the military get wind of something, you've done something like that, or convicted, once again, that you've gone through and done this stuff, and sometimes they wait for the conviction to come through, but they're not supposed to, because if you're accused of it, right away, you're supposed to be re-enlisted and taken right in before a military tribunal because you've violated your oath. But once again, this is how the corruption has prevented that, because that went to an extreme for all that served, which is the way it's supposed to be. But that's not always the way it's happening. Now, I want to blow your mind with this next one. We had the earlier conversation, and we're going to touch on this just a little bit. As we're going through and we're figuring out all the different things, and people have heard, if you've been in this movement long enough, and the things you're dealing with, like Rooker versus Feldman, when you're going into the federal courts, we're not going to interfere with the lower courts. We don't have the ability. And everybody's like, that's a big thing to overcome. Like I said, there's methods and standards. And I know a lot of you guys out there have said, well, there's a difference between the criminal standard, that meets a criminal standard for it to move forward. If it doesn't meet it, it can't come in or it gets dropped. And the same thing with the civil standard, but the civil standard is much lower, right? You guys have all heard that, right? Well, I want you to think on that as we got one more video, because, and this is why we got to cover this video. This is very important. This exposed CPS down in Texas. 100% child trafficking. Guys, watch this thing and think about that as you're watching this too, but think about what I said, and let's come back to it, because I'm about to blow your mind with that one. And that's going to freak you out once this comes out, because guys, this will apply to both your open case, your closed case, if you're actively involved in it, if it's something you've got to go back under. It's so egregious that it's such, and literally when you do it and you do it the right way, you're basically accusing all those that lied on you, that they presented false evidence on you and all this. And once again, this is getting it on the record, and it's not so much for your lower case, but once you file it on the record in the lower case, or even bringing it for somewhere or another, get it in there, even for your appeals. And understand too, some of your state appeals, they've changed. They're letting them do a Rule 60 or 6002. In other words, it's so egregious or constitutional, a motion to reconsider on some of them, or actually there's even some that are so extreme is a motion to void. That's huge. And we've got some other case law, but let's finish this last one. I know you guys have probably heard about it. I don't know if you followed the story, but here it is. This is the former Texas Department of Family and Protective Services has been accused of child trafficking, using her position to traffic children. Watch this, guys.
Her job was to protect children, but police say a former CPS worker is accused of the opposite. Huntsville police say Hannah Sample was charged with child trafficking while working for the Department of Family and Protective Services. ABC 13's Mo Hyder runs down the case.
A spokesperson with the Huntsville Police Department says the victim was supposed to be in state custody, and they believe that the former worker was the one who helped get him out. Hannah Nicole Sample was a Texas Department of Family and Protective Services employee until July of 2023, according to the agency. That's also when Huntsville police say they were contacted by CPS about a missing minor court records identify as a boy. Turns out, instead of being in state custody, court records state he was staying with Sample. Investigators tell ABC 13 after being notified by the state agency, police found both the victim and Sample at this apartment complex along Lake Road, where she turned herself in after an arrest warrant was issued. Huntsville police haven't said how they were able to locate the two. They did say during the investigation, detectives determined Sample somehow helped get him out of custody and let the juvenile stay with her while she, quote, engaged in sexual activity with him. We haven't been told by police how she was able to get him out of custody in the first place. We reached out to the Department of Family and Protective Services to ask questions about the accusations against Sample. They declined to comment. As for what's next, according to court records, a pretrial is set for February 17th. In Huntsville, Mo Hyder, ABC 13, Eyewitness News.
If she's done it with one, is this her first offense? Seriously doubt it. There's a pattern there. But did you hear the fact that she got the kid away from police? This is because the state has empowered them in every single state to be above the police department. Because they're a state worker. They're not a county or city worker. They outrank them, and they throw this around everywhere. And you guys have seen it all the time. Same thing I have. And yes, Tammy, I would have guessed that if he said he served at Leavenworth for 3 years with the DD-214, he had to have been an MP. Absolutely. Yeah, everything that we learn every day as we peel back this onion. We told you guys over a year ago, and once again, I am so proud of you guys out there that are watching. You're in the movements and doing what you are. You're making your voice heard. You're out there exposing the corruption of the illegal stuff that was out there. And it is, and we were talking about this today, at least 300%, if not 500% more today than there was just a year ago. That's huge, guys. That's huge in this movement, let alone the amount of exposure now because of the pressure. Now you're seeing all and the White House actually admitting that under the Biden administration, they were trafficking children. If you'll remember that press release came out. How did we let it get so bad? And this is one of the things that, and we covered in another show under the Declaration of Independence. Go back and read it again, guys. Because the same thing that was happening then is the same that there was the arguments of the colonists against the king is the same shit that CPS is doing to us today. We went to war over this stuff. Now we just roll over with it. How, and it doesn't, but it doesn't get me because, and once again, my family knows how I take and roll with that stuff. You come into my house and you don't have a legitimate warrant, you're going to meet the end of something real fast. It's called the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment, because that immunity and job title and everything else goes right out the damn window if you don't have a properly documented ink in hand warrant served when you come under either a knock or a no knock warrant. And I believe I'm correct in saying that, Herbert. Herbert is a former police officer. He's been retired for a while. That's one thing too that you're going to have to take in, and you're going to have to take and go one-on-one with things and look at them for what they are. Was it signed by a proper judge that had the legal authority, or the authority, not by the state, but by the federal government, to even issue a warrant to go in? Because just because you're a judge or magistrate doesn't mean you can do it. You're limited by the division you are, or the article judge you are. And these administrative law judges that are doing what they've been doing and signing a lot of things, that they don't have the power. The federal government hasn't given them that power. That is reserved for an Article 3 judge only, with one exception. And that exception is only done when Congress forms certain things and gives certain powers for a certain amount of time, and gives them and delegates those powers to a Article 1 judge. Do they only have the power? Now you've got a problem. Same way with CPS. I want your medical records. I want birth certificates. I want this, and you're to surrender them. And this is the thing you do. I'm going to tell you one thing, guys. Don't give it in. And here's why. And this is how you take and respond to that in writing, in your own words, in your own way of doing. But it summarizes this. Once again, this is for educational purposes, not legal. You make sure that you educate the court, because they do this all the time. The documents requested or demanded by the court is protected under the Fourth Amendment under papers. And it's also protected against unlawful seizure. And a warrant is required by state and federal law by a proper Article 3 judge to sign with a sworn affidavit the reason to go into the house, what they're looking for specifically. And it has to be not stamped, not e-signed. It has to be inked by the judge with the stamp of the court clerk and the signature of the court clerk to be a legally binding warrant. The only other reason that they can ever come in is called imminent danger, death. If I don't step in the house with what I see and observe, as I see what I see without breaking the law, imminent danger, somebody has to be in harm's way of death, or basically mutilation, we'll call it. If that doesn't exist, which screaming is not probable cause to come in, you can look at the court records. Once again, it has to fall under those strict guidelines. Now, remember what I said earlier, how you had to get past Rooker versus Spellman. You had to get through this. You had to get through all this other stuff, or somebody's lying on me, or this or this, that. This is where you have to pay attention. When they do that, well, it's, and once again, let's go back with the argument. This is, this is family court, and you'll hear lawyers and everybody say the bar is so low. Well, there's something you forgot about, and it's also something that strips them immediately of their immunity and the ability to be prosecuted and or sued, both civilly and criminally. And a lot of people are going, wait a minute, the thing you're talking about and getting ready to reveal here, it only applies to like contracts and, falsifying contracts and this and this and that. No, go read the act. You want to know what it is? And it's federal, and each state has it. It's called the False Claims Act. Go read it for your state and everything else. It's for any state employee or state-funded person, the way that it goes, how it reads through there, any government entity that knowingly falsifies information in up to obtain money or power or anything over another person without evidence, making a false claim, and it's black or white. Do you have the evidence to support the accusation for it? That is now filed under the False Claims Act. You call that out of this is this and that. So you either produce the evidence of this claim, not with hearsay, but with hard facts, because here's the thing, it's criminal code. And it comes down to simple, you've accused somebody of a crime or of doing something, you got to have the hard evidence to back up the claim and not hearsay. It has to meet the criminal standard, which it does. So now it brings the employee up to the fact of, you have to meet this, otherwise it's a criminal standard issue and you've committed a crime, which also does jail time. It's a felony, jail time with a fine under the False Claims Act. So no, to answer the question, everybody, they've been doing me wrong, they've been doing it wrong. Congratulations. You can now use the Federal Claims Act, which automatically bypasses Rooker versus Feldman, one of the ways, because the state actors were actively participating in a felony, a crime, by lying and falsifying court documents. So it goes beyond fraud upon the court. See, they got you with that one. But that's the little slap on the wrist. Oh, I defrauded the court. Your Honor, I mistook that filing. No, under the False Claims Act, that also covers their ethics to know or do the right thing. That includes the lawyers, the judges, the CPS workers, that they all have to follow that code of conduct or ethics. In other words, which also part of that ethics is to apply the state and federal constitution, which they're not. It's a huge red flag that when you claim that and you file it of saying, give you an example, under the False Claims Act, they said, I committed a violation of, and this is, I'll use one for an example. I violated a no contact order, even third person. And that's put against you on say on the record. And that's one of your, the charges they do. Okay, well, now you've made a false claim. What do you mean? That's a felony, which requires a warrant, an indictment, a court order, something through there to say that this has actually happened to back it up, because it's a criminal. In other words, they're accusing you, if you have met the criminal standard to be arrested and all those other things, and everybody else is going over here. None of that's here. Well, Your Honor, that's where we say, Your Honor, none of the evidence to prove this claim that there has been a no contact order or this has been done. Where is the evidence to support the accusation other than Bobby, Suey, this and that? And this is where it goes under the Federal Claims Act, because it's a criminal activity and all crimes must be investigated. Okay. You send a copy of that to the U.S. Attorney's Office for federal stuff and a copy to your state attorney's office for criminal investigation. And if you lay out how they broke the law and made a false claim, and then you put, there's no evidence on the record, now you got them. Because then the federal court or even the state's going to come back when they go to take over the case and they look at it over here and go to the judge or anything else, this wasn't discretion. And understand this too, there are tons of case law, and there was one that actually said for a judge or magistrate to completely ignore the law. That's why it's supposed to be such a severe penalty when they do this stuff, because they're getting paid to know this. That's why they sit in these positions. They're supposed to know the law. For them to actually say, well, I didn't know or I didn't apply, especially with your state's constitution or the U.S. Constitution, oh no, you can't claim ignorance because you sit in that bench in that position of authority, it says, even under the codes and everything, you can't claim that. So you were completely at fault. There is no mistakes. Why? Because the law has not errors, only people. You failed to apply it. There's where you get the judges and the magistrates, and this goes under the judges and the magistrates when it deals with their canons, their code of ethics, all those things in there. That deals with the fact they're supposed to be honest and fair. And when the court has illegal dealings, such as, one particular one we were talking about, 24-7-123 of Tennessee Code, where it said you must, which goes under due process anyway, is to say if you enter a forensic interview, you must have the child testify. Now, okay, I get that for cross-examination. In other words, the defense, for them to enter a forensic interview, the child must testify, especially in extreme cases of abuse and neglect. Now, I'm going to give you another one that you're going to love that backs this up. That's under, like I said, 24-7-123 is Tennessee Code. Each state has its own, but there are states that are lacking. Now I'm going to blow your mind, because this one, you're kind of, oh man, are you going to love this one? I mean, Here it is. Get your pens and papers ready, everybody. I'll give you a minute here to get your pen and paper out, because you're going to want this one, especially with what I was talking about with forensic interviews and so on and so forth. And I'm going to give you a case law that's going to back that up on top of that you can file with it to eliminate all the questions for the other stupid stuff that they try to file or do on you with some of these things. And that's what you're going to end up using that messes them up so bad, because, oh, well, it depends. It's family court. It's this, it's that. Oh, no, this even goes all the way to their accusations of abuse, neglect, and all that other stuff. And then say the child never testifies or not there for cross-examination. I'm going to give you federal case law, national case law on this. You guys ready? Crawford v. Washington. And I'm going to put this in here. I'll tell you what, man. And what this says, and you're going to love this. Crawford versus Washington summarizes what it says. And this is a 2004 case, and it is effective. And this is what the dissertation says from the judge. Because the child didn't testify at trial or your hearing or whatever you had, there was no opportunity for cross-examination of the child. Because the child's statements were inadmissible. This is their decision after the fact on a case to where this has happened. It's saying now the child's statements are inadmissible, such as the forensic interview. That's why that law had changed in 24-7-123 here in Tennessee to become compliant with this case law, was the reason it was gone through. Because the child's statements were inadmissible, the Child Welfare Agency failed to present clear and convincing evidence that the child had been sexually abused. In other words, the only thing that state case that went to the federal court, it went all the way up for this stuff to challenge once again, this is a 1985 filing that came out. This is the decision the court come up with, and there was no argument to it. That's why they made changes in a lot of states, because Tennessee just did that last year with a 24-7-123, even modified it even further. Didn't originate. You go back and see when it's originated in your own state. But it says here, because you just did, say, a forensic interview and there was no cross-examination of the child, it was one-sided, which CPS loves to do in their cases across this nation. What's it say that federal ruling is? There's no abuse then. You can't hold them to that without having that there. And guys, that's here. I'm going to put it in the comments. If you guys can see it, you guys can go back. I'll put it up there. Yep, you got it, Wicked Wise. That a girl. That tells you right away in that case law. Okay? 100% in that case law. They have to have this. This is a federal standard they have to meet. Now, if the child was taken, all this other stuff, then you add and this happened, and then they put the kid in foster care and everything else. Now you're looking at Title IV fraud. Now the snowball begins. Okay, guys, this is how you do it. But this gets you past. This is saying that the state acted so egregiously that they violated the once again the Federal False Claims Act, which states have something that mimic it in all 50 states. This is how you trap your CPS workers. But this is, you have to fill it out and claim the federal, once again, the False Claims Act, both federally and state. You can go look up the code for it, or where it's found within your state to articulate it in your paperwork. You file that along with, you say this, but there's no evidence, or there's no this, and there's only this over here. And you put this all on a paperwork on a motion for demand. A motion for demand and for correction and demands is what you title this thing. And you lay it out for them of saying, now you're committing felonies, and you're accusing them of more of the felonies, not fraud upon the court. Oh, well, you've now accused them of a felony, a violation of an act. That's a serious charge. By law, then, and then you put on at the very end, this also opens you up, all participants, to civil and federal, civil and criminal litigation, both state and federal. At the end of that letter, you just now have put the court on notice, and now you don't have to give permission or notify them, because you notified them on the court record already. Now you're ready to go to the appellate court. Now you're ready to go to the federal court. Why? You don't have to notify them anymore or serve them. Why? Because you just enter that thing as evidence or an exhibit. They've already been notified, Your Honor. And you walk right into your next courts. Bam. ADA violation. Guess what, guys? Well, my ADA wasn't done. False claims. They claim to have ADA. They don't. I didn't receive any ADA. They knowingly withheld ADA from me. This and that ties into the False Claims Act. Once again, you advertise that you have, and when I go to a courthouse, any courthouse that I go to, by law, under federal law, must comply with the ADA, and it must be readily available for you, and nothing for there to point you to before we get started. Do you have any ADA needs? If a good court clerk or anything else will ask the question when they're trained properly, and the federal court does an excellent job of it when you first file, is to, one, if you need something ADA, contact the court, especially before hearings or anything else you may need under the ADA, and we will make sure it's done. And I guarantee you, especially with places like Kentucky, they don't have something in the local courthouse. They'll tell you to call the head of state or the state capitol to do all this stuff. And that's not what the law says. Matter of fact, they get federal grant money and everything else. That is now false claims that they are providing under the fact they're receiving that federal money under the ADA. That is a false claim that you submitted. You will be compliant. That counts too, guys. And if you've got massive ADA stuff like that, you now have let them know, I can move this to a federal court. I can do this. I can do that. Why? Because you haven't produced it, and you document it in that filing from the very beginning up till now. Nothing has been done, or I have not engaged with the court-appointed compliance officer, the person that's supposed to do your evaluations, to this and that. None of this is done. Now it's blown your damn mind. And once you add the False Claims Act to this stuff on every little thing, it's no longer just a mild slap on the wrist of fraud upon the court. Bam, I got you on False Claims Act. And those are felony actions. Look them up for your state, look them up for the federal on what it says. But here's how you start. Go back and read the acts. Go back and see what it says for yourself. And they hide this from you. Now, I'm going to give you good news on it. I've done my research on this. Looked at court cases, looked at court history, both state, federal, so on and so forth. When the descriptions are clear as a bell, Clear as a bell. In other words, it's so fucking obvious you can't even, I mean, it's right there like the nose on your face. It's that stupid simple to see. And you describe it very well when you file these properly of how the false claim was done and how it lacked not having evidence, or there's no evidence on the record, as it'll say, in other words, hearsay. But when they enter it in their paperwork or in their filings, the same works both ways for both you and I and for them. When it's put on the court record, it's assumed to have been, it will be considered to be a fact. And I believe Tiff will tell you the same thing, because that's Wicked Wise out there. They consider it a fact unless you oppose it. That means filing a document saying, I call bull crap, and it has to be on paper, not in the courtroom. Why do you do it on paper, Gunner? I don't understand. This is a lot of stuff with paperwork and everything else. Yes, why? Appeals are won in the paperwork or lack of paperwork than what's said in the courtroom, because that's exactly what their procedure is to go. That's why they want to talk about it all day rather than have you file stuff. Now you've realized how lazy some of your former attorneys are. How much did they file? Whoa. Because did you hear what Judge Scaly said? That's what the law school is putting out. Lazy, low end, this and that. That's family law. They don't even get the federal license because they didn't even take the federal class. They don't know the law. They know family court. And this is the sham of the American Bar Association. Congratulations, guys. Full exposure, the whole thing. You're telling me, and then now you guys have room. Listen, I'm painting a picture for you guys for a bigger picture here. Pay attention. Because if we all start filing cases under false claim and exposing these magistrates, judges, attorneys, the court systems as being ineffective and inefficient to even practice law that they don't even understand. In other words, even to the point of False Claims Act and everything else, let alone the procedures they did and everything else. And now we've got them on, this is a false claim and you should see this. And when the judge doesn't rule your way, that's not that. Now it's a co-conspirator. Why? Because you had the same evidence I did in front of me. The point is, you're supposed to know the law. Judge, you're supposed to apply the state constitution. You're supposed to apply the federal constitution. You're supposed to know all the codes and rules they're supposed to follow, Your Honor. Nope. Buddy system. I don't know anything about their policies, procedures, internal workings, or this and this and that, and what's legal, what's constitutional, what's this and that. Why? Because it's business as usual, and it's a money-making machine. Fully exposed now. And when we had that conversation earlier amongst a lot of us, just, once again, which is one of the reasons we want to bring in maybe even a larger conversation with some people, is to bring some of those aspects of putting two and two together, to where everybody always thought that the False Claims Act dealt with things financially, or in the financial world, in the civil world is how it was applied. Go read the code. That's not what it says. It's not just falsifying paperwork. It's failure to truly investigate a crime. Because had you had done your due diligence, you would have uncovered the same thing had you had done your job, which now shows what? It exposes CPS of not doing investigations at all, but rather filing paperwork to get money and make money fast. No. You have an obligation under your own state codes, policies, and procedures to go through each of these and get to the truth, not a perception to thing to get them in foster care and anything else. Now you've exposed something completely different. You can hit them with False Claims Act under everything they've done, both state and federally, and there's criminal charges on both. And you file them with both state and criminal. Now you've notified the court. Well, here's the other thing that does. When you claim that and file that, case is gone. Why? because now everybody in there has co-conspirated in a crime, and you've put it on the record. It's a crime. This is where, well, I'm in the middle of my case. I can't do anything. They told me I had to stay out of the appellate court. Not true. Because you can do writs and habeas corpuses in those to look up your state and your state of appeals. And even under certain writs, especially when you're doing things, all you have to do is notify the lower court, and then you don't have to go through the process. They say, I have to go through my local court clerk, and then they send stuff up this, and I can't go straight to the Court of Appeals. That is not true. There is a method they will not tell you, because you could say my lower court is so corrupt. This is why I'm filing this particular writ, and the Court of Appeals will accept it directly. You can check with your own state. There's a procedure, but there's the loophole they don't want you to know. That means the higher court, they're doing something so bad, you're not getting relief in the lower court. I have to suffer through it. No, put in a writ of mandamus, put in a writ of prohibition. Some of these different writs that are out there, do it within the parameters that they're done and explain clearly with what you have. Let alone the fact that you're accusing everybody, and you've painted a picture and put it on the lower record, and you pointed out in your filing in the appeal, hey, I filed a motion, in there for demanded correction and all this other stuff, and nothing's been done, or the judge just ignores everything that I filed or anything else. Now you've got them accusing them of crimes. They're not to proceed forward from there. Now you're saying, I'm putting the brakes on this because I'm calling you all felons. You've all now committed a crime against me. That stops them in the brakes. But once again, you file that and then say, I notified them of it. They did nothing of it. Matter of fact, I didn't even give them a chance. I filed it right there at the very end because they knew exactly what they were doing. They're not stupid. But I notified them of everything that was on there, and it's actually on that record. Then you go to the Court of Appeals and then turn around, and what do? They just look at the paperwork that was filed. They don't go back and do the other stuff unless there's something particular you're complaining about that happened in court or on the record. They will review those things, but once again, they're going to look at it from a whole different perspective, because once again, as my friend Tiff says from Tiff and the Punisher, the one that wins is usually the first one to the courthouse. So if you're the first one down at the courthouse filing all these paperworks, and you've got all of this on the record, and you're the first to the Court of Appeals or anything, now you've got a huge leg up. And you've notified them on there that both state and federal action. Now you can go to the federal court, especially when you have a 1983, to go through there. You could go through it that way. You could serve writs in federal court. If you have no ADA, boom, that's an automatic end to there, but you have to notify the lower court. There are ways to do this, but they are not going to tell you guys that. But this is, once again, most of your damn lawyers that, if you've had family lawyers, don't know to do this shit. And then you look at them, it's like, is there one that's in there that's competent enough to take and do all this stuff? Well, think of it this way. It's the lower end of the standard to get a family law license and everything, a state license, and just practice family law, because it's quick money. That's why there's such a high demand for it, because it's a quick turnover and it drains the society. We don't need these lawyers. You know what we're going to need here real soon that's going to flip everybody out is electricians, plumbers, HVAC, builders. Why? Do you know the price that's going to go up on those laborers already? I mean, because of the high demand for skilled labor in those particular things. That's true infrastructure. Your stuff don't work with no power. You're very uncomfortable with no heat or no air conditioning. It'll make you miserable as hell. What happens when there's nobody to fix it, or there's one guy and there's a huge list and he can pick and choose what he wants? He don't answer to nobody. I'm the boss. I'll do this stuff, or my guys will do that. You watch how that'll take and play out, and we're having a huge need of that. Welders, iron workers, pipe fitters. These are rewarding, good paying jobs out there with excellent benefits. And like I said, most of the people, blue collar especially across this country, do these jobs, and they provide very well for their families. Once again, if they do things the right way. And no, I'm not going to have that conversation between union and non-union. Depends on where you're at, and once again, how that works and how you set yourself up. Depends on, like I said, depends on the job, depends on the area. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because it works in some areas, especially high metropolitan areas or jobs that do have unions that travel a lot, so on and so forth. But then, like I said, if you're just neighborhood, local, this and that, come on, man. I mean, that's where the small business owner comes in. But once again, CPS is coming through and wiping them out, especially in Blount County, Tennessee. I've got a whole list of general contractors, that they have attacked for nothing and drug them through all sorts of stuff to drain their money, draining those small business owners, especially in Blount County, Tennessee. And I'm seeing the same pattern across the country because they're milking them dry. Now there's nothing there. Now they're putting them down into a financial thing to where, well, you can't afford this. You can't. No, I can't. Not with CPS and all this other crap going on. Those people, they'll drain your damn pocketbook and your time, and they'll interfere with your damn job. With what? With no constitutional authority to do any of it, because it's supposed to be voluntary in all 50 states. But states have weaponized them and making them act like there's some sort of law enforcement. Matter of fact, state of Tennessee has the same thing. If there's a child case or something with a child, it's automatic call in CPS. Guys, guess what? That is interference with the duties of a duly elected sheriff and their deputies. 100%. And that's an elected position to represent the people of the county. Will the state come in all of your states, look it up, and they'll give it to CPS right away. This is why Arizona's going, we don't see a need for this because it's causing us more trouble, and they're back to the same thing. Why is it? And the other question that's came up, especially in Arizona, is why is this interfering with law enforcement? These are true. If it's a true criminal or criminal act, a true criminal act, then that's law enforcement. They don't have an oath. They're not being sworn to this. Now Texas and some of the others are getting into some of these things. But once again, if a kid's in harm, that was just constant. Why do you have to have mandated reporters? You're making people edgy, which don't. If you see something and and people that are in those industries know, report it to the damn cops. And I know a lot of nurses and doctors. I won't call CPS. I'll call law enforcement. If it's not worth that with law enforcement there. But then a lot of states cover the bases. If you get a call that involves a child, you make sure you do your investigation, but make sure you call CPS. That's a conflict of interest because that's the state looking to make more money. And that's what this is all about. It's what it's been all about. Well, and like I said, Ashley, you've got to take, when you have judges ordering things, this and that, once again, it's by agreement. It's an administrative law judge. Are they acting? And this is what SEC versus Jarsky dealt with. You have to stay in your lane when you're some of these judges, administrative law judges. Are you working as far as in your judicial capacity or your administrative capacity? Because there's a difference. In an administrative capacity, you're basically a referee between two sides of a contract, so to speak, and you're trying to hash out a contract to come to a common ground or common terms, which is what divorce court's supposed to be, believe it or not, guys. It's not supposed to be this rip and roar. If you get divorced, it's bam, 50-50 on assets, debts, everything else. If we have to, we'll liquidate everything. And whatever you had before the marriage, you get to keep. And then when it comes to the kids, it's 50-50. Come back with something, and it's not for the courts to decide. The court is supposed to enunciate during a divorce hearing, these are the rules. You must meet this. We have to get to 50-50. This is where they throw a CPS case or this up or this or that. And listen, divorce court, same thing, guys. Hit them with false claims. Now you're accusing them of a felony. Why? Because now you got to prove it. When you put that false claims out there with your accusations, everything else, you're challenging the state or your opponent to prove what just came out your mouth or what you just filed. If not, it's a felony in a courtroom. That changes everything. Well, I have no. You're stripped of your immunity because this is a felony. You got to put all that in that paper when you get to that correction, when you start talking false claims. And you can file it at any time. and you can update it at any time. But this is how you get the brake stopped on things. Now you have criminal activity that must be investigated before you move forward. You let them know that you know that. And the state requires it. Now they have to investigate. And it's not by their buddies at CPS. Nope, they bring in somebody from the state. And we're not talking, in other words, from out of the county and buddy systems gone to deal with nepotism a lot of times, especially in case they'll get somebody from a county or two over, or they'll send somebody from the capital that specializes in that department of false claims. Yes, they have some places even have a department just for that. Because now the point is for the state, and because it's actually a set of checks and balances they hid from us of saying, hey, well, you can get away with this in family court. You can get away with some hearsay. You can get away with this. No, not under the False Claims Act. You can't. And that supersedes everything because why? It's in every state as law, as a high code, as a mandatory thing. And it's also federal the same way. You say something on somebody and you say it in court, or you put it in a document as a state employee or even another person, because it is applicable to other people in civil cases. That is a false claim. That is a criminal act. This was applied properly. Here's the other thing this does by just filing that. It would eliminate a lot of the traffic in the court, wouldn't it? A lot of cases being dismissed fast. They ain't making money. Ain't no wonder they hit it. Oh, yeah. Because it also causes an investigation, because you also notify them. I'm reporting to the Attorney General, which there must be an investigation on this, and we can motion to stay. It's in there as well. Don't make sure that you preserve all evidence. Don't delete anything. Don't tamper with anything. But we cannot move forward under state law, or as they call it, state law, but state code or statute, as well federal law. We can't move forward with this case. We can put the brakes on it right away. So when they come in with allegations of this and that, once again, you go, Your Honor, well, I'm going to take and do this. I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to file a False Claims Act on that CPS worker. So unless you can provide hard evidence right here, right now, and if I'm not satisfied, not the court. In other words, you either have it or you don't. If not, dismiss this case immediately. It would stop everything in every CPS case immediately, because it would say, prove it now. Because if not, here's the flip of the script. If you don't prove it with hard evidence, not hearsay, hard evidence to back it up, because it has to meet the state and federal standard. Uh-oh. Got to meet the state and federal standard. If it doesn't meet that with the evidence, you now face criminal charges. This gets away from frivolous filings that CPS does all the time. Now you got them. And then you don't have to deal with it when you go for a 1983 case, because, Your Honor, everything they did was based off of, from the very beginning of the case, and that violated the False Claims Act, both state and federally. We don't have to deal with Rooker versus Feldman. Why? Because you're dealing with a state act, a violation of law, a felony. There you go. Easy as pie. And it's so out there we go. How do you do that? Go read the act. This is why people, they'll read something quick through it, and they'll go with whatever people tell them, or anything else, especially in a lot of these support groups and that. This is why we dig deep for you guys on our shows, is to turn around and go, no, go read the act. It'll blow your mind, both federally and for your particular state, because every state's got one. And when you guys go Googling that and look up the actual documents, you're going to turn around and go, holy crap, why didn't I know about this? Why didn't my lawyer know about this when I kept saying they were lying on me, that we didn't put the screws to them to say, it better be true, or you just committed it? Why? Because you're a state employee. You're a federal employee. The fact that you put that down on paper, in there, I believe that they're doing drugs, they're doing this, they're doing that, and there's not even a drug test to say that's False Claims Act. You accuse me of committing a crime. You accuse me of false things, crimes especially, or, once again, falsehoods. It's better to focus on the crimes, though, guys, than the little itty bitty, nitpicky stuff. Go for the major stuff. You accuse me of severe child abuse, and this, and that is what you're going after. You've provided what? No hard evidence, only hearsay. Well, we've got to do this. We've got to hearsay. Here, once again, that's the criminal standard. And once again, to charge them so easily, this is so black and white with the False Claims Act, is saying back up what you said or printed as a state employee or court official. Show me. Not we all feel. Prove it. Lack of supervision. Once again, where's your hard evidence? Lack of education that it goes on with, some of these things with educational. Well, they do this and that. Have you looked at all ADA compliances? Have you given all ADA to the kids? Have you given them an IDEP? Have they done these evaluations? Have they done this, and that while they've been in the state's custody? If it's something like that, have you gotten those things done? Nope. Why? Because every time I asked, I didn't get anything. They failed to comply. How is that my fault? Because, and once again, here's the dates. This is why we tell you, put everything in writing, send it in emails, save those emails. Paper trail, guys, put it as your evidence. And then if you have trouble, like I said, in the lower courts, when it goes to the Court of Appeals in every state, they're not going to deal with it off of what was said in the court. Predominantly, it's what's filed as hard evidence, 100%. And then you've got the CPS worker and everything else, to where the CPS attorney, oh shit, they're calling for False Claims Act. I hope you got all this, because it has to meet the false. Now you have to meet the False Claims Act level, not family court level, and you've called them out on it, and that bar is very high. And it says specifically, you must have evidence to back up your thing as a state or government employee, federal employee, whatever it is, even local government. You better have the damn evidence. If not, you're officially committing a felony, and you're outside it's basically saying you're falsifying evidence. And this is how it protects. This is a checks and balances act is what it was for. And it's real simple. It's not hard to apply. It's, once again, it's by doing this was a crime. By them, that the CPS worker claimed this, and this. Well, there's no evidence on the record on here, any hard evidence that is required by the False Claims Act. You must back everything up that a state employee or a court official has accused me of. Must have hard and convincing evidence to write it on paper. It goes beyond slander and liable. It's not slander because they're a state employee. Now you've met them at their, once again, the level they're supposed to be performing as statewide under that act. Okay, both state and federally. You can't. Okay, cops are allowed a little bit of leeway, with some line, but once again, even then, it's very strict on how those cop can lie to you that they've gone way overboard. But once again, this is about education, about you guys realizing what's out there and now going, oh crap, I can use that. False Claims Act, all of a sudden it says if you want to continue and you continue on this stuff and it goes through this, and then I have to go to the appellate court because I've already filed the fact either in an affidavit of truth or this or that this is not true. And once you put it on the record in those, and like I said, those documents, and when you educate yourself, and then you do the thing for correction and demand of saying, I've been accused of all this. There's no evidence whatsoever on the record, but yet the court has continued, and my filings have been ignored, and or this and this, and you just list everything through there and say, this is under the False Claims Act. There has been no evidence to support this, let alone you have terrorized my family. Now you've opened and once again, you put them on the record. Now you have opened yourself up to both criminal and civil litigation, as well as both state and federal criminal, the criminal investigation for all those things. And now you're going to pursue those, and you put them on notice, which I will be notifying those things. Now there's a problem, because now they know they have to stop. They can't go, well, they won't stop this. File it on the other, and when they don't, they go to the federal court, because you can file it under the Federal False Claims Act, and that goes for state employees too. Once again, you can file it under the federal, and it's federal jurisdiction. Why? It's a federal act. You got to file in the appropriate court, and you can even mark it as emergency, especially when kids are involved. Hey, we've got a problem that they're calling me this, and they're stealing my kids over all this stuff, and all this stuff is lying. There's no evidence of this stuff, and this is being brought in as fact upon the court. I have rebutted those things in this particular filing, which I will cite, and I will file that as one of my exhibits, as well as of course, if it moves to federal, then your whole caseload, everything that's been filed, not what's been said, but what's been filed, will be reviewed at that point. Because once you file that, you can't stop. Darling, if you're in your house, you got to have a warrant. They can't come from another thing there. It has to be actively in the system, Brandy. A cop come from another county to arrest me without a warrant? No, they're by law that falls under the UCCJEA, that for interstate communication as well as state to state communication. I believe that would apply for there. Do some research on that once again. And that's interoffice communication. In other words, if it moves from one district to another or from one county to another, they are obligated to notify and get permission. Now, if you have an outstanding warrant from another county and another county picks you up, yes, they can hold you on that. But no, they can't cross that without having officers from the thing. And then there has to be paperwork that shows that you were arrested, you were booked, and it was legal in that state under an active warrant, arrest warrant, or a bench warrant or whatever it was that they have to do that, and that they can seize you, and then they hold you, and then they're supposed to transfer you, but they have to document that all in the paperwork. If they just had a cop come from the county over, as Bob's your uncle, no, they failed to do the paperwork. Now they've committed a crime because they didn't follow the UCCJEA. I believe it falls under that same thing, because why? You didn't contact the sheriff of your department, didn't call the sheriff of the other department and get permission to come into his county, regardless of this. And they'll fight over that. Listen, man, there's places in Alabama, Mississippi, this and that. City cops and county cops go at it all the time, or county and county cops. Your authority, like I said, you are elected by the people, that, especially a sheriff, to represent and protect your county only, and protect it even against the state. And that is under a FOIA request, Brandy, to see whether or not those documents exist. Interoffice communications from, say, this county to that county, that you're looking for the interaction between the two. Halftime show football. No, I kind of dropped off of a lot of sports and everything, just due to the fact of a lot of the sports is similar to the Coliseum at Caesar. When I realized that, yes, it's for entertainment, but it was enough to distract us from everything else that was going on, and the money that was spent during those things, and watching what had happened to people like Dale Earnhardt and what NASCAR did to Dale Earnhardt. If you guys don't know about that, you can look at the history. The same thing with the changing of a lot of the rules with basketball over the years, and watching people like Michael Jordan play. Yes, Brandy, through a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. You just look for that communication, and you just request specifically the documents you want from the right department. And you can even call up there and say, where do I file this? If you have any questions. Sometimes the court clerk will help, and other times you have to serve stuff to CPS that, hey, it's under a FOIA request. If you're a pro se litigant, they have to release that stuff to you by law, because you are pro se, and that would actually be withholding evidence if you're pro se, because they're required to give you that by law if you're pro se, because that's the same as being an attorney, and they're supposed to share that evidence once again, as required. Any internal documents. Why? They're the government. They work for us. And you guys forget that sometimes. And a lot of people I know, not you guys in particular, but a lot of people out there forget they work for us. And there are things like FOIAs and other things, and you can demand them. And if they don't produce them, you can escalate FOIAs for criminal action for non-compliance under the FOIA Act. You can actually go to a federal judge because the Freedom of Information Act is federal. It's mandatory. That would be a proper filing to the federal court to hold them in contempt if they don't produce it. Hey, I've produced it. They didn't respond it within so many days, or this or this or that. And there's been cases upset. Wait a minute, all the evidence is deleted, all of it's gone. Well, now you've got a thing for a case. And I've seen that happen in a couple of cases where paperwork has just disappeared or it wasn't filed at all. And somebody's through their whole case, like there was no orders put in, nothing. And all of a sudden it just turned around and goes, yeah, you were supposed to have that. Now you didn't retain all that. Well, now he can't get a fair retrial. You can't you can't even do an appeal on it because there's no records. It's an automatic overturn. So there's been a lot of those things. You know what I'm saying, that deals with that stuff. But like I said, make sure that, like I said, you're going to back up once again, with a False Claims Act, say you have to let them know, and it has to be on the court record. I took, and hello, Michelle. I did notify the court. I did correct the court, but they did nothing about it. In other words, mine is on fact now. And once again, it also, the rules are, believe it or not, in most states in family court cases is they're supposed to, even under their own codes, go look at the code because it's in there, or policy and procedures, however they've got it filed. Each state's different. But it literally comes out and tells the judges they must believe the parents over the state when it comes down to conflict. That otherwise they have to provide the evidence to support it. Once again, coming in line with the Fair Claims Act. But once again, until you throw that False Claims Act, not Fair Claim, but False Claims Act, you throw that out there and you make them aware. If you don't tell the truth, if you falsify your paperwork, if you do this, and that, that is not only perjury, it's False Claims Act, it's a criminal act, and this and that, which also means that it has to stop and it has to be investigated criminally before a civil anything can go on, which includes they can't hold your kids while they're doing a criminal investigation. Oh, guess you didn't catch that one, did you? Yeah, you can. There's a lot of times if you file it properly, you can demand your children back. Why? Because I'm accusing them of a crime in the intent of how they got possession of the children. They committed a crime. Well, that's automatically makes the case null and void. Anything they had. Why? A criminal act occurred. Which also means what? Immunity's gone, guys. All that immunity they love to have, notify them. Your immunity's gone. Now that hurts. But once again, these are the secrets they don't want you to know when you're dealing with your cases. Why? Because they're going to turn around and they want to keep you as ignorant as possible, shoveling and bleeding money to attorneys that do nothing. And this is what we're hearing all across. The attorneys, worthless. There's one or two out there, people have said, not a bad person, kind of does this and that, good reputation, or fights with it. But once again, a lot of these family attorneys, you ask them, can you help me file a 1983? And there's a reason they keep them dumb and they've kept it in this court. They know they don't have federal licenses. I'd say well over 97% of them don't hold a federal license that has a family law. The same person, not part of a firm. Let me clarify that, because some people say, well, my firm has this, but my firm has a federal attorney. But this is half the stuff they should be referring even in their own firm. Say, hey, I need a 1983 man drafted Ricky Ticky. This is what I got going on, and turn around and go, But once again, they're dipping more money. Why? They're assigning GALs, which gives them more money. Then you start taking them, well, we're going to give you a public defender. And right there, as we exposed last week on Kentucky, well, the court-appointed attorney that my wife had, the turnaround, her and the judge are, how did they put it in one Facebook post? My sister, and these are white girls, sister from another mister. been friends since, and this was a post on, I believe, 2018, expressly saying how they've been best friends for over 15 years, which now to this date is over 20 years. That was never disclosed. And we blasted it out there. That's a huge conflict of interest. And then she wondered, I don't get this attorney. She's kind of nice, but she just tells me to just do what CPS, is telling them to do, and this and that, and biting the party line. Come to find out, they're best damn friends. Best fucking buddies. Their husbands know each other. They go to galas and events. It's all over Facebook, posted all over. And then on top of it, and come to find out upon some research that the judge's husband then was one of the leaders or founders of the CASA in that particular, in Madison County and the surrounding counties, I believe is where it was, in Kentucky. Talk about a conflict of interest. How can a judge sit on the bench when her husband's running stuff for CASA? It's a huge conflict of interest. They should never take and have a judge doing that. Wow. Now you guys are getting an idea of how corrupt this bar association is, how little it is to do this, because the lawyers make quick money on this thing because these judges are supposed to analyze these cases. They make a decision so quick. The question is do they go through what they've heard and everything else? Do they look at the paperwork and any other things there? And they don't ask the question, which once again, the same judge and magistrate did, that both Jessica Saxon and I have the same one. Yes, from the Tanawa movement over there. She's from the same county. To if you're just checking in, you haven't followed, but to turn around and say the fact that it was the same magistrate and judge, and the fact that both of them had broken the state's constitution and the federal constitution and didn't allow cross-examination. Now, I read you the case before with the Crawford v. Washington, and it was up on the thing. No cross-examination, no abuse. Case thrown out. Unsubstantiated. You got to follow the rules, but the thing is, they're hiding the rules. And these attorneys, they should have known this stuff. But they don't. Because now, all of a sudden, girl, if you've never had a trial and CPS has done everything and stuff to you, then you're the first of the courthouse. And you file. And you file all that stuff against you, and you get into a courtroom and file in the civil courtroom, not the family courtroom. Because you're going to get a better thing in civil court. You need to get on the thing, girl, and start filing in civil court against them that they're not doing this and that. And civilly, you're going through, those particular things. Because if it's just CPS getting involved in doing this without a judge, then you put all that on the record. Your Honor, they've been walking, and I have no contract. I have not signed with them. This is violation, because then you pointed out on your own state where it says, and you can look at the thing, working with CPS is, once again, voluntary. And you could go back and find case law on it, the whole thing to do it, and this, that, and saying that I'm being forced into it. That's something completely different. Listen, a lot of those are on there. Yeah, that's a conflict of interest too. I mean, if you're Judge Darlene, judges with CASA, yeah, it's to do, to go through it. You filing the False Claims Act, you have to do you have to file it in the lower court of the court that you're in, or even if CPS is doing it to you already and forcing you in this, and you go to the civil court and find out if you're actively in family court or anything like that, you file it anytime with all the corrections. In other words, they're saying, the false claims is saying, hey, they're accusing me of child abuse. They're doing this and this and that. I haven't done that. And once again, child abuse and severe neglect, to have those on there, and a lot of time a criminal code, which is also back up to your state constitution, because the Constitution, especially in Tennessee, says no person shall be made to be held accountable for a crime unless they are presented, indicted, or impeached. In other words, what CPS did, for example, to me with some of these things using criminal codes and some of the others, is illegal. There was no crime. They are claiming there's a crime when there's not even been an arrest, an indictment, I mean, anything with considered that. And you can reiterate the same thing. It doesn't exist. And this is what in other words, you took my children, you did this in family court, accusing me of this crime, but I've never been charged with the criminal aspect of it. Right there, that's violation. They didn't give you a criminal. That's hearing, well, they can do this. Yeah. Okay, well, if you use a criminal code, you have to go by the criminal code of conduct, which automatically tells you the judge you're dealing with more than likely is not even qualified to hear a criminal case. There's the first thing, didn't have jurisdiction. Second off, you violated the state's constitution more than likely because there's been no criminal. Show me the criminal charge. It doesn't exist. Now you've got False Claims Act on the entire court. So, okay. Brandy, just start getting that stuff on the record. If they're looking at doing stuff with you till March, now's the time to get all that stuff on the lower court records that you can still have able to file on this. That's kind of a window for you. File the False Claims Act. This, and a lot of times they're going to retreat. But here's the other thing. Doing the research that I've done both in state and the federal courts with False Claims Act, they follow through. And when you articulate it just right, it's done. You see what I'm saying? You can still file on it, Brandy. Oh, last March, you should still be able to put something on the record, once through this, because that's the rules. If you have something as grievous as a False Claims Act, you're like in Tennessee, you have to go back. You have to go back to the original judge that did that, and you can file that under a Rule 60 that it was so egregious of crimes and this, that, or under like new evidence. And with Tennessee, they give you a chance to the original judge to correct it. Now that also resets your clock, which it has a 30-day window in Tennessee to go to the appellate court. So if the judge denies it and it's rock solid with what you have, you feel, you file the same thing, that now you want the appellate court to look at not the original case, but to look at your Rule 60 filing that you did. There you go. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Oh, Madisonville? Yeah. Oh yeah, that county's real fun. Lot of stuff going on over there. So these are some of the things, guys, you need to consider, and I hope this has really been helpful for you guys as we run a little bit over tonight, but we got a lot to cover. A lot of stuff in the news, but also a lot with this, to go through there, with these particular things, that it helps educate you and do everything. But like I said, the important thing is get things on the record. Even if the case is closed, you can put a Rule 60 in there. And yes, you can go back on there to right to file anything. They have to accept a Rule 60. They have to, like I said, you file into the case, say, hey, I've got a Rule 60 that needs to go in. The judge needs to see it. They have to accept that filing's failure to accept a filing like that is actually a felony for the court clerk. Failure to refuse. And you can get a microphone or a little camera or something, catch them on there that they're refusing your filing, and then you escalate it all the way to the Supreme Court right away that they failed to do this and that. Then you go straight to the Supreme Court and you file in the Supreme Court that failure to accept filings, and then you enter that as your evidence, if you so choose, and dictate it according to your own circumstances, and then turn around and file that with the Supreme Court, because now the Supreme Court has to rule on it and say, what you're doing, or hey, I won't do this or I won't do that. Darlene, if you've got a Rule 60, they have to accept a Rule 60 in every state. Every state, it has to be done. You just have to see whether or not it goes straight to, in your state, goes back to the judge in the lower court first. You have to notify them to where they can correct it themselves, or you can file under a Rule 60 with actually the Court of Appeals. And one of those things, once again, use the extra stuff as evidence. This is the evidence I have that's new or under the Rule 60. Here's the recordings of them denying me my right to file. Of anything else, they've rejected my filings, which is why I lost my case. Because why? If once again, they wouldn't accept any of my filings. So they're going to throw it out because of rejecting of filings, because they're going to wonder, okay, what was it going to file? Or you tried to file something, and then the court may ask, like I said, you could do as another exhibit, Your Honor, this is what I was trying to file at that time that the court clerk rejected and wouldn't put it on the file. Then you also report that to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then you have like the Board of Professional Responsibility or something like that for the court clerk, for anybody with a license. It's named something different in your state, but it's like for lawyers and people with licenses, you just file it there generically, and then they open an investigation, but you have to include all your proof and everything else. Rule 60, or it could even be, I think, a 61 or 62. You'll have to look up, depends on how it does. A Rule 60 is saying there was, and you can look it up for yourself. What is a Rule 60? You can Google it, and it's good for all courts. A Rule 60 is mandatory. It means take a second look at this of saying you have made a grievous errors in this, and you don't do anything other than the grievous errors of you failed to notice this, you failed to follow this procedure, you failed to follow this canon, you failed to do this, you have the False Claims Act because there was no evidence it was done this, and now it's criminal activity. There's all sorts of ways, and every case is 100% unique and different. This is why there's not a cookie cutter way of doing it, which it's very, you can generalize, which is why we educate people. We can give you generalization of this stuff and apply it to your own case, or using just common knowledge or just common sense with some of this stuff, the way it goes, which is basically common law, to address these things. It's just, hey, listen, it says this, and once you quote Federal Claims Act, they're going to have to pull out that act, read it, and see whether or not it applies. And it's very specific with what it says in those particulars. An attorney, and here's the thing, Brandy, actually, no, this is supposed to be, here's the thing that's going to scare you. This should be common knowledge for every voting American. This is how our public school system has failed us, because we all should know about trusts. We should know about the ins and outs of law, where to look for things, just the basic stuff. Why? That's how we stay engaged as Americans with our judicial branch of government. But they spend one semester maybe in high school to deal with government class. Nowhere near enough. They should be teaching this all the way from elementary school, all the way up, age appropriate, to understand everything from constitutional rights to kindergarten, such as, their right to believe what they want to believe, their ability of not to strike people. These teachers should be teaching that, as well as teaching the law, besides just keep your hands to yourself, of saying, you realize when you become an adult that if you put hands on somebody, that's considered assault, and you can go to jail for that. So we need to keep our hands to ourselves so we don't go to jail. But they don't teach that, because they want you to break those things. They want you to commit those crimes. They want you to be a statistic in the system. Why? Because then you'll end up in the court system again. Then you'll end up in this. This is where ignorance leads us, is profit in the criminal sector, is ignorance. Public education ain't going to do that, because why? Then they'd have somebody that would stand against it and know more. Do you think people that go to these private schools, or even some of the homeschoolers and stuff like that, no, they know this stuff. A lot of them know it. Matter of fact, they hated the fact they know it. Matter of fact, a lot of ultra religious groups would do they would claim First Amendment. They would know their religious freedoms like crazy in these private religious schools. Yeah, but this is all about money. And here's the thing, guys. Did you know most of the prison systems are subcontracted for profit? Privatized. It's not the government that runs it. They subcontracted out somebody else that does it off a business model to make more money. Yeah. Same thing with CPS, same thing with foster care, same thing with, these boys' homes and girls' homes. It's all run. And here's the other thing, who ends up taking and doing most of the sponsoring and still runs a lot of those places? It's not just the city, it's not just the state or this or that. A lot of religious organizations. Did you know every major religion or religious organization actually sponsors a boys' home or a girls' home or an orphanage or something like that to, or kids that are troubled, group homes and stuff like that? They all have pitched in tons of money, because it's a way of making profit off the federal government to what? Fund their religious beliefs. Don't believe me? Go look it up. It's all in their budget. It's all generally public, for this and that. If you go to a certain religion, Baptist, Lutheran, this and that, you have every right to go to your head or your not just state convention, but your national convention that has the monies, and it's open to you as a member. Sometimes it's members only that gets to see those things. They're supposed to have transparency of where they get their money, and they will too. That, and you can ask them, how many orphanages do you run? How many children's homes do you run? And this and that. How much profit do you make off those? Because the word nonprofit means they can make a huge ass profit off of it and just give it to all their churches or their pastors or anything else and just give it out. So long as the money's spent, it doesn't matter. Welcome to the tax fraud game with religions. I wouldn't really call it tax fraud, but it's legal. I personally think it's a little fraudulent because, once again, I don't personally believe those two should mix. I don't believe the government should be funding any religion organization in any form, shape, or way, including their homes. Once again, I believe that's a violation of the Constitution that the government's not supposed to have under the First Amendment, that they're not supposed to take and fund or specifically give money out of this. So their concept of that, well, we won't cause discrimination. We're going to give money to every religion that particular way that runs these things. And that's where how much of the abuse comes from, how many trafficking rings, how many this and this. Guys, it goes on and on and on. And I always tell people, listen, man, I got no problem having a conversation with you, but once you put on the glasses, you can't take them off. And for a lot of people, that hurts because we've lived in a safe world, but we forgot one thing, guys, that we've lost over generations. The concept of raising children is one thing. Our duty as parents is to raise our children to live in a world without us and be prepared to adapt to the technologies and changes that the future brings. We don't do that anymore. I'd say a majority don't, which we should. We're not benefiting our kids by keeping them caught up by what cell phone goes on, what video game, what movie, whatever the things, the vacations, the 31 bags, to this, to that, the soap, and all the other things we obsess and compulse over, or even sports. I'll even give you sports for, and that can go for both men and women. We have lost focus and we have been entertained and distracted to giving up our rights. Now that we've noticed it, though, as we do on this show, and this is, once again, this is going back to the Declaration of Independence, and it talks about this specifically. When we realize it and we realize we've been enslaved or we're under a tyrannical government, it becomes our duty and our obligation to either reform, the word, I'll use the word reform, or, correct or abolish that system. It depends on how far it's gone. And then to make new laws once it's been replaced, to make sure and go back and look at the history, how they got where they were, to make sure they never go back and do this again under any other name or any other flag. That's what the Declaration, that is where our true freedoms come from, not the Constitution. Our freedoms lie in the Declaration of Independence. And it tells us we will become complacent as Americans, as all civilizations have done throughout history, because it's beautifully written. But it says when we finally notice it, now we got to fix it. And that's the beauty of our Constitution. We can do that. But it's getting to the point now with everything stirring up. I'm waiting for people to wake up to the rest of this, to where people get to the point of realizing what's been done, and believe it or not, start using their Second Amendment like the Battle of Athens or anything else. And if it has to, even overthrow it by whatever means necessary, because it's tyrannical. And we've already put it on the record. If we have to remove these people, it tells us to do that. We have the power to do that. Well, that's now you're talking about doing stuff like January 6th or, the J6ers or this and that. No, I'm not. I'm talking about what both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution says we are obligated to do when we realize it's come to that point, and it's to that point or past it. Go read the Declaration of Independence again. Look at some of the complaints the colonies had against the king. Family court is right up there with almost every single one of those complaints that were registered. Every single one of them up there. Read it. They're doing it right now in the family courts in the court system. Why are we allowing this to do? And states weren't designed to interact with people. They were only supposed to regulate commerce, commercial. We're supposed to live as free people under the Constitution. Not this other stuff, but we have given up those things for safety, for all these other things because we feel the illusion of being safe or protected and this and that. We're not. Because now all these sheriff's departments and everybody else is going out there working with CPS and following state illegal orders. I'm going to call it what it is, illegal orders, because it violates their oath 100% to work with CPS. It's a simple thing right there. You cannot be there. A crime has not happened. Once again, you're allowing them to come in. It's in their policies and procedures to enter your home and to do this and do that. And these deputies and these officers stand by and watch and or participate in these illegal acts. Now, half of them don't even know what a legal warrant is. Because you ask them, do you know what article that judge is? Well, no. Well, how do you know that that's enforceable? Oh, because I'm going to ask you that on the stand, and I'm recording you right now. So here's the rule. If I challenge you during that thing, you have to have an answer right here, right now, or you're committing a felony. If you can't articulate, you completely understand what you're doing and you're competent to do your job, and I challenge this and you don't have a rebuttal for me, your power's gone. Regardless of what that says, because you can't tell me yes or no or for sure. Now, cops can't lie on that. Did that come from an Article 3 judge that has the power and authority? And is it signed by the judge with ink? Is it stamped by the court clerk and signed by the court clerk to make it a legal binding document? Because this is not an emergency situation. Emergency means we're hot at this and people are getting ready to get hurt or this and that. And those usually come with what are called no-knock warrants. It's an emergency thing to come in. And like I said, usually deals with drugs or trafficking. So the other thing, it's not applicable to the other things. The method or the standard is once again, two different standards, and the court upholds those things. But you guys have got to figure this stuff out, like I said, and you've got to apply it. Now, all of a sudden, your mind's blown. Holy crap, they've been doing this stuff. They've been doing this. They've been doing that. No warrant, anything else. Brandy, that's a Fourth Amendment violation of seizure, because without a warrant, they can't remove anybody, because if you look at the Fourth Amendment, it says persons that are secured. And there has to be court documents or something go through. CPS does not have that power to bypass the Constitution or the state's Constitution because it mimics it. I'll agree with you, John. Police don't know the Constitution. They couldn't articulate that. Even the video we played earlier of SCOTUS saying that even the lawyers don't even know the Constitution. Yeah, and once again, you look under their policies and procedures, Brandy. Like I said, when it comes to that, there are deadlines for those things, and once they don't meet those deadlines, they've lost jurisdiction right away. You have to look at their policies and procedures. You got to dig around and root around in those things, because they have to meet certain things and have a hearing within so many hours and do this and with that from when the kids were taken. It's all in there, and you can point all that out and file that under, like I said, False Claims Act and everything else, failure to do this and that. You put all that in there and you put it on the record under Rule 60. That's a new filing, and they won't overturn your case. Fine, we'll go to the Court of Appeals now because you reset the clock. So once again, but you have to get it on the record. Your voice means nothing. Everything about this game, especially with the courts, is paperwork, 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 100%. Well, guys, it has been an exciting episode. And like I said, do us a favor as you guys are going out, share that we're on every Sunday night, because a lot of people are going, man, I didn't know about your show, or Facebook has blocked you and the shows weren't coming on because they were watching on Facebook. I see some of the Facebooks coming through with Brandy. Once again, the YouTube, the Facebook, however they're watching, guys, just tune in every week and share with everybody. Guys, there is so much information that helps everybody. Oh my gosh, did you hear this? And like I said, as we begin to, and this was the point, is as we went through this federal case, we were going through our federal case, we're going through everything that we're going through. The idea is to teach along the way as we learn, as we find out, of saying, hey, listen, this works. This is the last nail in the coffin, though, is this False Claims Act. Because 90% of the people that contact me, it's the first thing that they say. They're lying, and then you ask them, have you filed anything? No, but I told my attorney, or I can't have my day in court. No, that is so false. That is so false, because it's about mine. I lost mine for a year and a half, and then he ended up aging out. But like I said, when it dealt with some other things, so like I said, my wife's kids, that's something we'll deal with later, because that's caught up in some massive litigation, and we're not going to tip our hand. Okay. But some massive stuff's going down to where Tennessee's going to be fully exposed. Kentucky's going to be fully exposed. It opens the door now with what they've done to us, to now we can actually have a case that we can expose everything nationally, of saying this is not just between these two states. If they can do it between Tennessee and Kentucky, it also means they can do it with any other state. Huge amount. Like I said, it opened a huge door to do a lot of stuff. That's what we're talking about with what we're doing here, which is the reckoning. Is that there's going to come a time, especially with what we found out today with the False Claims Act, it's time to hold them accountable. It's time for them to be reckoned. And there's just a lot of things that are going on, and we appreciate. Like I said, don't forget, once again, the summit that's supposed to be September, I believe it's February 21st or something like that. I'll put it up on my page if you guys follow me on Facebook, and you can share it. Invite everybody to come out that are leaders of these groups. We want to come together, because there's a lot of stuff we can learn from each other. And that's the point of this, is education, not pointing fingers, not being derogatory. The question is what is your perspective? Back up your perspective with what you have of how you see this, and you know how these things work. Because like we've had this conversation with several people, just because you file it doesn't mean they're going to always read it. And once again, now you're dealing with procedural issues. Even in some cases, they'll ignore everything you damn file. That goes under, like I said, their codes of conduct and everything else. But remember, you have a right, and they were supposed to tell you what you're accused of before you were ever even brought into the courtroom. But remember, read that and read your state's constitution and start digging around those places, because that's where you're going to hammer them, and then hit them with this one. Whoo! It's a 1-2 punch, guys, and it's easy to get right in to a federal court when you file anything federally, even before it's time. And hammer. And remember, a 1983 only deals with their official capacity, not their personal capacity. The personal capacity you file for an individual claim in the court of claims on an individual basis for each person, transferring all the criminal action, everything else. You can ask them to be to max out their bond, to max out their insurance. You can remove their license. You can have them put on a Brady list. That's the worst thing you can do to somebody. Brady list. Why? They can never interact with anybody else ever again. Thanks again, guys. Don't forget to check us out again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. 9:30 p.m. every Sunday, Eastern Standard Time. Have a great week, guys.